Welcome to Exploring the Ozarks, where we tell the history and stories of location, places, and people that make up the Ozarks. Here's Matt! My timing has gotten really good with that.
You've done pretty good, and I like to thank the audience.
The audience that we have. They're mainly here for, Brandon.
That's a huge audience, man.
It's big.
It's pretty good. What do they call that? A 10,000 audience? 10,000 person audience?
10,000 bit. 10,000 bit audience.
1,010, right? Okay.
It's at least the sound bite is good. 10,000
like
something like that.
About. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Exploring the Ozarks. I'm Matt Graham, your host. I'm here with David Carr, my co-host.
That's me.
And very excited to have Mr. Brandon Beck with us today. Thank you for being here, Brandon Beck.
You're welcome.
We're going to do our standard intro, but feel free to jump in.
I'd like to jump into that.
Just do whatever you want to say.
Because people are wondering who that is sitting over there with his sexy, or just another sexy ball guy shirt on.
Yeah.
That'll be the teaser. You have to make it through all the announcements, and we'll talk about it.
There it is.
Yeah.
So we are here today at Springfield Studio One for this podcast. Check them out if you want to record your own podcast. You can actually pay to rent this spot. You can also have David with Creative Endeavors help you put your podcast on, put you on film.
I can record it. I can produce. I can help write scripts. You need ideas. Need me to actually write or stock for you, whatever.
That's what he does for us.
That's what I can do, yeah.
So he's pretty well versed in it at this point after all the episodes. But if you want to record your own podcast, you can put on your own small play. He's got a huge studio back here.
Which I didn't show Brandon on the way in. I don't know if Jake showed you.
I think on the way out maybe, but he's got a full-on theater in there.
It's like a black box, so 60 to 70 seats.
Springfield Improv operates out of here as well. So before they were the Skinny Improv, now they're the Springfield Improv after COVID.
Every second Saturday.
They come in here and they do their thing in here too. Yep. So A&E just filmed a documentary in here, actually.
Wow.
So no big deal. But
I was going to say.
I'm not going to brag on myself. That's what Matt here.
Dude, he's always so modest about it. I'm like, dude, A&E, it's kind of a big deal.
The funny story with that is I didn't even know who they were until after they left.
And I come walking in one day and I see
they're national?
I see 60 people in here with all these cameras and stuff. I'm like,
it wasn't that many.
It
was about 8. It was 8 or so.
Oh, they moved fast.
They did.
But they had all this professional stuff. I'm like, who the hell is in here?
It was really impressive. It was.
Hi, I'm David Carr, and I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I feel like you're channeling Nathan Fillion right there.
That
was good.
I'll finish now. Or if you need a space to rent for an event, come on by and see us. Get a hold of David Carr over at Creative Endeavors or Springfield Studio One. We'd like to thank our other sponsors, of course, Central Bank. We've got Creative Endeavors, VIP Marketing, and soon to be, I'm not going to say it because we haven't finalized the paperwork yet.
And honestly, it's kind of, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But we're excited for it because it's great to have that company on board.
Well, it's hard for any podcast especially to come out and within 2 months we've been doing this.
We've been doing this for 2 months,
2 months. We've got people that are lining up to want to sponsor this, which is unbelievable, right? So we're pretty excited about this. But of course, we're sponsoring this because we put a lot into this.
Oh, yeah.
None of this stuff is free. My time's not free. I charge people $100 an hour
I
for
got
what
a
I do.
team.
So.
I got a team of editors working on this, and other jobs. But,
right. We've got our marketing guys, sitting right here behind the cameras. But you can find us, with all that said, find us on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all the podcasting sites like Spotify and iTunes Store. And David, real quick, talk about Patreon and what that is.
First, I'll say hi, Mom, because you're our Patreon, which may have changed by now.
Thanks, Terry.
Especially because I'm hoping that we'll put out some more different things, get more Patreons here soon. But hey, Terry Carr, thank you for supporting us, Patreon. Patreon is a way to support us if you aren't a big business and don't want to pay us thousands of dollars or $100 a month. And you only have like $5, $10, $25. That's great. The more people that can support us on those levels actually gives us more ability to bring people on here.
Right.
We don't charge for people to come on here. And we honestly, the more sponsors you get, the more you can kind of be controlled by that. So the more people we have on Patreon supporting us, the less we have to worry about getting that next big sponsor.
I like the way you put that, actually. But we also have our sponsors come on the show if they want to do a show with us and things like that. So it's, but back when we had our radio show, our basis was just the same, because we had a lot on the radio show. We had a ton of nonprofits. I mean, we're in the land of nonprofits.
Right.
So, with the 2,900 in Springfield, I could have swore we probably had at least, 50 on or something like that within a couple of years.
It feels like it, yeah.
And, it was one of those things that it was kind of a labor of love for us to put their story out there.
Yeah.
Because every nonprofit starts with a good story. And so our voice to use, we felt like needed to have nonprofits with it. So that's what Patreon
that's what
does
happens.
for us.
Yeah, Patreon does that thing where we can actually focus on stories that we want to tell that you all want to hear. Because as a patron, you get a special page that you have access to us with, and you can give suggestions, and you also get access to special content,
and
like the conversation that we had before this that we recorded, and then we went off the rails, and that's going to probably be on Patreon.
It's private though, so yeah, you can't.
But
really
it's
go
private. You have to be. So
Brandon's
my mom can see
over
it.
Here now.
My mom can see it, but nobody else can see it. So if you want to be able to see the things like that, then get on Patreon.
There it is.
$5 will get you in. $25 is preferred because that's the most you can spend on there. So.
And once you get to a certain level, we're working on our shirts. Our shirts look super awesome, by the way.
Merchandise.
And we will have those out soon. So a lot's happened in the last 2 months. By the time this comes out, it'll probably be 3 or 4 months, I'm sure. But
no joke.
We've got a lot of content.
No, this will be. So we're recording this in March. This will be in April. That'll come out.
Perfect. So allergies will still be a
allergies.
thing.
Oh yeah.
Storm systems.
Storms. That's when we're going to get.
We
hot
may
and
have
heavy.
a snow in April. Who knows?
I'm surprised while we were in Florida last week, if we would have had precipitation, we probably would have had a pretty gnarly ice storm. I'm assuming, right? Like, I was gone, and I'm like, it's 65 degrees here, and I'm super upset because I'm at the beach.
Weather is just so weird.
And I looked at the weather from Missouri, and I was like, oh, geez, it's like 17 degrees at night now. But had it, but that reminds me of something that we'll talk about in a little bit, which is memorable storms in the area. So let's just get
that's
into
what happened. Like when as another vacation story last year when I went to South Texas, because I go there every year to look at space rockets. That's just what I do.
Look at them.
I take pictures and video, and I just gaze.
Right.
I'm a Starship Gazer. Anyway, which is an actual YouTube channel. Anyway,
but not yours.
I may be a bit of a space geek.
Not at all.
Space is cool.
But when I was down there in the literally the southern tip of Texas, bordering Mexico, it snowed in January. Like, this is before the big snowstorm, ice storm they had down there. But there's a very southern tip, and it was like 35 degrees. They had a little bit of snow happen. I was like, why in the world? Man, how did this weird weather system happen all the way down here in southern Texas?
It's everywhere, though. I mean, you're talking. We talked right before this about how much snow it's been in Mammoth and in California. And I was just telling you, I was supposed to be in... You definitely have to have you talk about those rivers, like the sky rivers that have been hitting California.
Oh, yes.
Those things, when I first heard that term, I was like, is that a real term? But it's like...
Atmospheric river.
There we go. Which
That's
is
even
still
worse. I don't know.
It sounds more sciencey,
But thankfully,
really
I guess
cool.
we should finish by saying, but that's why Brandon's here, because he's a meteorologist.
He's going to break it down for us.
Yeah,
right?
at KY3, and he's going to be able to explain all this stuff to us.
Right, because we're talking, I mean, I was supposed to be in Utah last week, and instead we went to Florida because the lady calls, and she's like, hey, what kind of car are you guys driving? I was like, well, I've got a diesel 2500 truck.
Is it a high rise?
She's like, okay, well, it sits up pretty high. Then I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And my wife's on the phone with her, and I could hear her, and I was like, I'm going in there for that conversation.
Right.
And I said, put her on speakerphone. And she's like, well, I just wanted to see because my husband's trying to go plow it right now with our bulldozer, and he can't push the snow because there's too much snow. And I was like, lady, you're
What,
crazy.
the bulldozer?
Yeah, your bulldozer can't do it, but my diesel truck, I'm sure, can just fly right through it.
I have seen so many Instagram videos during like when California got all that like 9 feet of snow, like people showing like them tunneling and making tunnels to get out of their house, but it's still like another 6 feet above.
Those
their
are
heads.
So crazy.
So why is this happening then? Let's break it down. Let's get into it.
Well, it all comes down to river moisture. No, actually, here's the weird thing. Like California, most of the time will get almost all of their rain or snow in a 3-month span during the winter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the rest of it is just sunny and dry. That's why I would hate to be a meteorologist there most of the time.
Because it's just a boring job.
Yeah, it's like...
You have to worry about the snowpack is basically all I have to worry about.
Well, you're like, it's snowing again.
Right.
We're going to get some more.
But in the summer, I mean, in the spring, summer, fall, it's the same thing almost every day.
Well, and they've been in a drought.
I was born in California,
How long
I can attest to that.
How long has the drought been going on out there, though?
Well, it comes in stages. This latest one's about 3 years.
Right.
And so, you've heard all the stories back in the summer about Lake Mead and them finding skeletal remains.
Oh, I watched some
mob
videos.
remains.
Mob people killing
barrels.
boats and cars. And
hey, look, there's Guido. But
he was shot first. Wait.
I knew it.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that most of these national articles that talked about all this drought, and it honestly, it's the national media tendency to link everything to climate change.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's drought. It's the worst ever. But they don't talk about the fact that as far as those water levels go, the demand for that water has increased exponentially.
Well, that is the big thing I read. Like because anyway, when I read stuff, I try to get scientific stuff, and it's like they talk about how the population is so high and they don't conserve enough water out there.
Well, that's
there's no way to really handle that.
And they knew that was the problem,
and they've known it for a long time.
That's why they built that lake in the first place in the Hoover Dam, was to retain water for this growing community.
It's an agreement between multiple states, and they won't all agree to a new agreement.
Well, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. I mean, even when the beaver population went away and water wasn't standing around anymore, and it wasn't, flowing into the Colorado River and things like that. You didn't have these little offshoot lakes and things like that. And then once the beaver population went away, then all of a sudden you just had free flowing water. So the Colorado goes from Colorado out toward California, into California, and then down to Arizona to Mexico and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But when you start talking about Lake Mead is down, what was it? 600 feet or something like that.
Something crazy.
It's crazy number.
Insanity.
Yeah.
So I have to ask then, do you feel like these atmospheric rivers and things that have been happening, do you think it's going to help fill all that stuff up substantially, or is it going to be...
To an extent, and I can't remember all the lake names. First of all, Mead is on the other side of the Nevada border, and it gets most of its water from snowmelt from the Rockies, not the Sierras.
Right.
So, the good news is that, like in Utah and most of the Colorado River Basin, they've had anywhere between 150 to 200% of their average snow. That's not going to fill it.
Right.
No, but it'll help.
They need a bunch of years like that in a row. But it'll help.
A bunch of years, and then they need to... Well, desalination is a big thing that they're trying to figure out. Yeah. Powering that sort of a thing.
Salt just ruins everything. That's the hard part.
Well, that's why they have to desalinate it next to the ocean.
So you got to think, atmospheric rivers. What is that? Explain that to me.
So basically...
And then we have to ask the question, because we told the viewers, we talked about the shirt.
Oh, yes.
So after the atmospheric rivers, we'll get to the shirt.
Okay. Yeah. So an atmospheric river is basically just a huge river of moisture in the atmosphere. I mean, it sounds real basic.
Okay. It has to do with the Gulf Stream, though, right?
No, Gulf Stream's on the other side of the country.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
So the atmospheric river, another name for that is the Pineapple Express. That's what it used to be called.
Not the movie I'm used to.
But atmospheric river sounds, I don't know what it is.
It sounds cool.
Fancier,
it's very
cooler.
Evocative.
Right. So usually if you were to look at a satellite loop from, say, the West Coast back through Hawaii, you would see this big long line, and it just takes all this Pacific moisture from the jet stream. And in this year, it's a bit of an odd year. We've been in a La Nina. You guys probably heard that term thrown around.
I got jokes.
Remember that from growing up when I first heard it?
You remember Chris Farley?
That's where I was going. Yo soy El Nino means the Nino.
The Nino, right, exactly. Oh my gosh, that guy was so funny.
Love this.
Anyway, so El Nino.
We just came out of a La Nina,
right?
Which is a cooling of
the water near the equator, off South America.
Should have been a meteorologist.
But usually,
you should have.
La Ninas focus all the heavier moisture on the very northern side of California.
Okay.
This year it's been further south in what is typically an El Nino pattern.
Oh. So that has shifted.
The game is afoot. We really don't know why it's been weird, but they've just had one after the other. And I think it was, I read something about this last night. I'm trying to remember the spot.
I mean, this is media, so we'll just say it's global warming. Just like you were saying earlier.
Well, that's what you were saying. It was climate change. Which,
yeah.
That's a whole other slippery.
But what is it? What is it actually? Because we probably shouldn't touch climate change with the 10-foot pole podcast.
Well, let's just say, and I'll put it bluntly, the Earth changes.
Yeah. Sure,
right?
It does.
We're not helping it.
Whether it's man-made or it's not. It's like
so we're not helping.
Yeah, it's okay. Probably not. But you look back in history, and that's the problem with a lot of. I'm not saying climate change has no role, but what is missing from a lot of these national stories and these articles that say, it's the worst ever, is context.
Right.
Yeah.
And people these days did not live back in those really early years when the same stuff happened.
Right.
But they don't have the context to go back to. They just, I
remember there was a big volcanic eruption in, I forget what year it was, but
91?
On the West Coast. This was in the 1840s or 50s, something like that. But the video I was watching about it, they're talking about how if you look back in like Native American mythology and their stories, they actually talked about when it exploded before. Yeah. That's really the only way that you know about these events is if there's like an oral history or if it was recorded,
or it's
written down.
Geology.
Yeah.
Geology plays a big part in knowing what happened at certain times.
And most weather records, like meteorological records, I mean, and you'll know this, so correct me please because I'm probably wrong. They only go back like 100 years.
You can act like you're right.
Most of them.
That's what I was asking. Yeah.
Like Springfield started in 1888.
Yeah.
So it's a little more than 100 years.
And those instruments weren't always
right. They're not the same as they are today. Yeah. We could get into the weeds on that. But the point is...
well, that's what we're here for.
Brandon, you didn't know what you were signing up for.
Just kidding. The idea that climate change is responsible for all of it. And it's like, okay, it's flooding. Yep, that's climate change.
Yep.
It's a drought.
It's
that's
just a
climate
byword.
change too.
Yeah, it's just an easy bugaboo. It's
and that's what I'm going to say.
Closet.
You work for the media outlets. And,
right.
And is that because and I don't want to put you on the spot for this, but do you think that the media just has those talking points that they want to put across because they know it's a good soundbite and they know it's going to get a headline of some kind, maybe? Or is it just getting redundant at this point?
Hard to tell. I think, honestly, from the reading I've done about it, and no, I'm not a climate scientist. No, I haven't published, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But just looking at it from from kind of a backseat position where I'm watching all this happen and all the headlines come out. And to me, it's the scientific community, they have this hypothesis that says, well, all of these different changes correspond to an increase in CO2, therefore it must be the CO2. Well, the unfortunate thing is you can't really prove that hypothesis. It's over too long of a time span.
Right.
Because you can't go back 1,000 years.
Well, we've not been recording very long,
So, it's like the scientific consensus, and anybody who poo-poos that is essentially shunned in the scientific community, and so you don't hear those arguments for it. So, I don't know whether there's politics involved or money involved. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories. Blah, blah,
well,
blah.
what always comes down to for me is it's like if I was in a room trapped with a car or some other pollutant, it would kill me in a little bit. So why not just try to get rid of that stuff in general?
Well, and I've
whether it's climate change, whether it's not, it's like it's good to get rid of those things because like you go back to like the industrial era where they had like all those smog coming out of factories, like
industrial
when we were
revolution,
when industrializing, it's like that killed a lot of people.
Sickness,
Well, so there's no reason not to get rid of it, but it's like let's not try to scare people with this thing. Yeah, where it's like maybe it's causing weather change, maybe it's not. It's like okay,
it's got to. I mean, every time I even drive down the highway, I'm like, you got your AC on or something, and it starts pulling in that diesel exhaust right in front of you. And you're like, this has got to be great.
I'll be excited
when
it's all electric, and it's like you don't have to worry about that anymore.
I heard an argument the other day that was about since it's NASCAR season, what happens to NASCAR if everything goes electric?
Oh, that'd be amazing. Still, think about all the acceleration.
Well,
there.
you think most everybody goes to that because they want the feeling and the sound of the engine.
Have you been to? Have you been to one of those?
I've been to a ton of them. Yeah, and that is really one of the biggest.
Sure, it
is all those cars coming through, and they're.
I still remember.
It's fun, man.
So you've been to an actual race. But
it'd be very quiet if it was Teslas.
Yeah. Okay, guys, that's 40 rounds. Pull in the charge.
It would be a fast battery swap. Is probably what it have to be. Can you imagine like them talking about that? It's like, okay, they're gonna pull the battery out, and you see like the 3 prongs.
Yeah.
All these guys come out with batteries,
or they go down from the Indy 500 to the Indy 50.
Right.
And then, they actually have 24-hour races that are all electric cars, and then they have Formula E races.
I didn't know that.
So they actually have these cars that are high end, that do these high end races that are all electric. So it's actually really interesting when you look at like racing is kind of leading some of that leading edge technology.
They always have though with cars.
Yeah, because they have to, because they're pushing the edges. That's why 24-hour races have been so important. Is they've really pushed that edge of like miles per gallon and efficiency and
if you notice though, like all those cars that are in those formula races or the 24-hour Le Mans and things like that, they're Ferraris, but even like Honda. You didn't think of a Honda as a race car, but they're one of the leading race car companies now. Then you start talking about these electric cars coming out, and even Ferrari and Porsche and all these other companies that they're testing it right there on those Le Mans roads, which is the future of cars. So
let's go back to weather though.
Let's go back to let's
go back to that shirt.
Let's drop the shirt in here real quick.
Okay.
It says Universal Studios on it, so I'm actually very confused as to where Just Another Sexy Bald Guy shirt came from for Universal
Bruce
Studios.
Willis.
Beats me. I don't know. It was on the rack.
It was on the rack.
My wife and I were we went on our delayed honeymoon.
Oh wow.
So I remarried in 2021.
Okay.
But because of the timing of it, we weren't able to take
I'd expect
vacation
not.
at that point. So we had
great
to wait.
timing.
We did it in this summer, so we went to Disney and Universal. Anyway, so We go in there, and
I have to ask, though, did you get a Harry Potter wand or something?
No, I did
at
not.
Universal? What?
We did go through there, and I'm like, dude, it's a stick.
Come on.
It's a stick.
Okay,
for
how about a robe?
$50.
How about a robe?
No.
Did you at least see the dragon spouting the flames?
No.
I'm trying to live vicariously. I'm trying to live vicariously here.
Oh, we were there in the daytime, so that big old show they do there, they discontinued. They're like,
really?
Yeah, they're going to do something different, I guess.
That's so sad.
Anyway, so we go into the shop, and my wife spots this shirt across the way, and she goes, "There's one, honey."
Your wife?
No, it wasn't this one.
Oh.
It was Homer Simpson.
Even better.
In underwear.
Okay.
Holding 2 donuts, one in each arm, and it said "Sugar Daddy." And I'm like, I don't know where I can wear that shirt in public.
Right.
And I mean, it's funny, but
so I'm going with the sexy bald guy.
That's right. I found this one. I'm like, hey, this one fits. I've even worn it to church on a Wednesday night before.
I love it.
Better. I love it. You must go to a cool church, man.
That speaks a lot to your personality, though.
Yes.
Because I think Jake's the guy that he's done the producer, social media stuff and everything like that, runs the cameras. He was talking about you have to be really confident with yourself in order to wear that kind of stuff.
Well, you know, I just
yeah. Well, when you got it, you got it. You know, I mean, I get it. I know.
It just makes people laugh.
That's really
and
the
it's
thing.
fun. I mean,
I like to make people
wear
laugh.
stuff to do that as well. Where it's like I have a shirt that says it has 2 stick figures and one has the other one's back, and it says "I got your back."
Oh, that's like physically has his back.
Yeah, right.
Has his back, and that's one thing that I was telling Brandon before we started this, anyways, was it's enlightening to be able to go through all these. You have so many options when it comes to news anymore.
Yes,
but it's nice to be able to turn on my local news station and see Brandon Beck on there, and he's always, especially in the morning, because I'm always dragging ass, and I hate it in the mornings. I hate mornings. I absolutely hate them. But I'll turn it on every once in a while, and I'll hear you, and you're popping in during the Today Show and stuff like that, and I'll stop what I'm doing to listen because I know it's going to be entertaining. Number one, but I know you're going to be you're great at what you do, so that's number one. But then to go from this mundane stuff that goes on the Today Show, and then you come on, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I needed to hear this part, So it's enlightening to have you in our local area because we travel so many places, and I see so many news stations.
Yeah.
And a lot of these poor people, they struggle, man, to try to be funny. There's some that are organically funny.
Right.
You're organically funny, and you're much appreciated by myself. And I'm sure lots of other people in Springfield appreciate you for what you do for us.
I have a funny story.
So thank you.
A weather woman, this is on Instagram. She was doing the presentation. They switched out screens. You may have seen this. I'm going to ask you if this has happened to you before, too. But they switched out screens, and the screen kind of froze, and it started multiplying. And then she moved around, and it was like...
I've seen that.
Yeah, there was like 20 of
tracers.
her. She's like, how many Jennifers do you want to see? And then they reset everything. It was just... So along those same lines, have you had anything like that happen over your... Like, how long have you been doing this? And have you had what's like the oddest thing that's happened to you?
Next month will be 27 years.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really are a staple of the Ozarks.
And that's all in Springfield?
Yeah.
27 years. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's KY3 is one of those legacy stations that, I mean, I started there, and it's what we call a medium market. So you've got television markets are based on the population that the signal reaches. So number one's New York City, and I don't remember how many millions it goes through. But then you go all the way down to like 220, which is pretty much Cousin Eddie, your mama, and who knows?
All your cousins,
yeah, right, that are watching. It's just not a very big audience. So you'd think like a Casper, Wyoming or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
So Springfield's 75, 76, so we're kind of dead in the middle.
Okay.
And most times you would start, now this is back in the day, you would start at a much smaller station, and then Springfield would be like your second or third job.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
Not that way anymore. But for me, I started there, and when I go back and look at the tape of my first weekend on the air, I'm like, they hired me?
Oh, man.
They really did? Wow. It's pretty funny.
We got to find some of that.
We do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and look for that. Maybe we'll put it in right now while we're talking about this.
Is there an archive or something that we can find for this somehow?
That you can find? No.
Yeah, dang it.
No.
If you feel up to it, send us a clip.
I don't think it was even I don't even think it's been digitized at this point. But
it's still
if you can
on
find
reels.
it, record it with your cell phone and send it to us. We'll put it into this podcast.
Yeah, that would actually be fun. That would get a lot of views. Anyway, so nowadays people we're hiring straight out of college, and in fact, markets like Kansas City, which is 18, something like that, They're hiring straight out of college. So it makes it much more difficult for lower markets to attract talent when somebody can come out of college and go, I can go to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would I go to this little town?
Yeah, but the thing is, the experience is lacking.
Yeah.
And so it does show,
right?
But cheaper's better.
But sometimes. I think and KY3, I notice there's always a lot of young kids on there. It feels like. I mean, I'm looking at some of them. I'm like, man, did I look that young when I was 24?
Yeah.
But I think they go through so much training now, and that we've all been brought up in watching the news that. I think if you wanted to be in the news, you probably paid attention to that growing up, and you mimicked that or whatnot. So when you go to school, you're probably pretty serious about it if you're going to want to do it, because a lot of the guys, or women and guys too, that I see coming through KY3, they're all pretty good at what they do. I mean, they're very well trained, obviously. Some better than others as far as just talking, but there's a lot of them. So that just kind of wants me to take us back. Where's my bling?
Oh, sorry.
It's that time now, Brandon. So let's talk about who Brandon is.
Okay.
Before we get back into weather, Brandon.
Because the big question is going to be, why is the Ozark weather the way that it is?
Right. So that's our
dangling carrot. We're going to build up to that. Yeah.
So Brandon,
we're doing that really well this episode. We're just putting things out there and saying, you got to wait. You're gonna wait and you're going to hear it.
Yeah. We want to build it up, right? So
you better not give us like a 2-sentence response to that weather thing.
He's going to.
I feel like it's going to have to be.
I talk in tangents like you guys do.
Thank you.
You ask a question, then I'll go somewhere else, and then oh wait a minute. So real fast before you do this, you asked me if anything ever happened to me.
Oh yes, I did ask that question.
See, I was waiting for that to dangle it out there.
There was a time when I was at the Green Wall. So back in the, I don't know what it was, mid-90s, we actually had a blue wall that was a screen that dropped out of the ceiling in front of one of the sets that we only used in the morning.
Oh, wow.
So in the morning, we would use these big roll-around TVs that were at the time state-of-the-art.
I remember that.
I don't know what they weighed, but they were clunky-looking things, and that's what I would point at.
Oh, my gosh.
So I could wear a blue shirt in the morning, but then at noon I'd have to change it. Well, I forgot one day.
Oh no!
So I walk onto the
and nobody
chroma
caught
key.
that
chroma key. Yeah,
no. Until I walked onto the screen, I'm like,
and nobody noticed it either.
There's like radar showing up between my suit jacket and tie, and I'm like, they tell you if something happens, don't draw attention to it, just move on. I'm like, dude. And hey, Ethel, come look at this. That nobody's hearing a thing I'm saying because they're like, why in the world is the radar showing up on your shirt? So I opened up my jacket and I said, I've always wanted to do this. It's going to rain right there. And
oh my gosh.
I pointed at my belly, moved on. Well, that made it to the NBC National Blooper Show a couple of times. So I was able to call all my family, hey guys, I made it national.
That's cool.
It's because I screwed up.
Yeah.
But hey.
Yeah, that's
screwed up. You screwed with grace and with funniness. Comedy. Which was good.
I mean, we're going to get into some other things too that happened on the show, but that just reminds me of when Ron Hurst didn't have his pants on.
Right, yes. That will always be around.
That poor guy. I mean, but he made it on the national
yes, he
bloopers
did.
A few times. I think there was kind of a feature for him, so glad you didn't make a feature. But.
There was one other thing that I can remember, and that we had a different guy, and we have robotic cameras now.
Yeah.
But we had camera operators at this point in time, and there's this guy that didn't normally do it was behind the camera for my weather segment. And so he had the shot framed just right. And at some point during the weather, he hits some button.
Oh, no.
That's an extender. And so this different lens rolls in front of the camera while I'm watching it, and all of a sudden my head fills half the screen.
I think I remember that.
And I stop and I'm like, hey, look, I'm hugified. And then he cut out of it. And, it was
Don't draw
funny.
attention to it, though, right? Number one rule. Don't draw attention to it.
I think Brandon has learned how to deal with it.
But that's what I think,
draw attention to it in a funny way.
They do give you all the rules, but that makes you human now.
Yeah.
With people in Missouri, we demand
and that's how you end up
human.
on this podcast because Matt saw the funniness.
Do you remember Lexi Spivak when she was here?
Yeah.
She was one of our morning reporters.
Yeah.
And so now everything is, in a sense, computerized. You still have to have people running it, but instead of having a director, a technical director, a tape operator, an audio operator.
No cameraman now?
Right. It's all linked.
What?
So there are preset shots.
Well, it's because you're not walking around in a newscast.
You guys have sections of the room too,
right?
Yeah.
So there are preset camera shots. There are, let's say the producer is putting in a story that's on Chad Pline close-up. So that set of computer commands is linked to that story. So when the director hits that button, it turns on his mic. It has the camera in the right spot. It's all kind of one.
Nice.
Wow. So you can't blame somebody now when the mic's not on?
You can. The person setting it up.
Okay.
I still have to turn it on my pack,
okay.
which I've done. Forgot that a lot
so
of
that's
times.
your fault ultimately, yes.
Anyway, there was this one time where the next segment after me was Lexi in the newsroom, and somehow the director accidentally hit the button mid-weathercast. Like I'm mid-sentence, and all of a sudden it cuts to Lexi. And I'm just standing there with my mouth open, like, what just happened?
And what's Lexi doing?
So Lexi was ready, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
So she does her little thing, and then says, "Back to you." And so they cut back to me, and I'm like, "Well, that was rude."
I think I remember that actually.
As I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. There's a tornado coming. No, it wasn't that bad.
And it's still live. That's the glory of it all. Is most of the stuff is still live. So
that's hilarious.
So let's go.
But that's
back,
when you know
though.
it's professional crew, though.
Right,
which
it is,
good.
but it is super. I hate to use the word scripted. You guys have scripts for every single thing, right? And it's kind of redundant that everybody kind of sounds the same. I've seen those bites on whatever YouTube or TikTok or whatever, where it shows this news media outlet in New Orleans is also doing the same thing as New York or Massachusetts or Missouri.
Right.
All the same storylines, but Missouri, I think KY3 does a pretty good job of making it sound like it's more local at least, and it's not just the same. But let's go back though and do what I was getting ready to do.
Yeah.
Who is Brandon Beck? Where's he from? What brought him here? All that kind of stuff, because that's why we started this show in the first place. It was to get to know people that are local celebrities and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to consider you a local celebrity, number one.
I think he is.
Number two,
Point,
you've earned it. So
if he wasn't this podcast, he's going to do it.
Well, that's right. You kind of have to be cool to be on this podcast.
That's true. That's very true.
We're getting there, anyways. Thanks for being here, Brandon.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But so, where's Brandon from?
Born in Arkansas. And
Which
some
part?
people are going to say, well, that explains a lot.
yeah. Boy, which part?
It's Searcy, which is, I don't know, an hour northeast of Little Rock.
Yeah.
Kind of off the...
Pettit Jean.
I don't know if it's the interstate. Is it an interstate? I think it's an interstate runs through
It's
there.
a really windy one.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about between Little Rock and, what is it, Jonesboro?
Okay.
Anyway, it's a big four-lane highway. So I was born there. My parents attended Harding University, which is down there. And I'm not sure how big Searcy is, but it was the White County Memorial Hospital. Oh. And they have a real thick Southern accent down there.
Yeah, they do.
And I had a meemaw down there.
If you had a meemaw.
Yep.
You were country.
That's right. So moved to Baldwin, Missouri, which is St. Louis suburb. And I don't know exactly when that happened. I was there till my 7th birthday, and then my parents split up, and then I was in Colorado, where my mother's family was from. Until I came here.
So she goes to her family in Colorado.
Right.
And which part of Colorado is this?
Northeast corner.
Northeast corner.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you're talking flatlands,
Right.
Not Colorado like you think. Colorado.
Exactly.
Okay.
Most people think Colorado.
You were with the
mountains.
Rocky
No, you were with the
Mountains,
prairie dogs.
That's right. Wheat, corn, and cows.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Awesome. Lots of weather though.
It had its own beauty. I there's a small part of me that misses it. This was a one stoplight town, 2,000 people. My stepdad was the only doctor in town.
Oh wow.
Oh.
Which is pretty much been like being a pastor's kid. Everybody knows where you are, what you're doing, who you're doing it with.
You're a doc's kid.
I'm a pastor's kid, so I get it.
All that kind of stuff. Anyway, so from there, came back here to attend Evangel College at the time in 1992. So,
all
got a
right.
broadcasting degree from there.
Why Evangel?
I wanted to go to a Christian university, and I looked at them and Oral Roberts.
Oh, wow.
And Oral Roberts to me was very impersonal.
Yeah.
It just really big.
Right.
I came here, and it was
Hometown feel, right?
Yeah, it was hi, how you doing? And everybody pulled out the red carpet for me, and they really had a program that had a high rate of placement in the broadcast
for meteorology and
not meteorology,
just journalism,
broadcasting in general.
Wow.
And I went that route.
I didn't know that
because I thought, if weather doesn't work out, and that's what I thought. Well, I want to do that, but that way I have my foot in the door one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so a guy that at the time was the assistant news director for KY3 was flipping through cable access one night, and he caught our newscast, which was a weekly thing over there at Evangel, and he thought we were so bad.
It was going to be a positive story.
Yeah. And his wife says, well, why don't you go help him then? So he did.
Oh.
He volunteered his time.
You were that bad. Wow.
Well,
This reminds me of my State of 48 story where that's how I started organizing with State of 48. Because it's like we watched this live stream, we're like, this is so bad. So my friend and I were like, we're going to go improve that. So we did.
But so this guy felt so bad for you.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I talked to my wife and she thinks I need to come help you guys too.
Yeah. But
That's how bad it is.
Wow.
He would come over 6 o'clock in the evening after his work day, and he would stay there till we did our show.
Nice.
And
That's
gave
once a
us
week,
pointers, and it was great.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So he says,
And you had that connection then at that
right.
point.
And so I was doing weather at the time,
Yeah.
and he says, I think Marcy needs to see this. And I was like,
Who's Marcy?
Marcy was the news director.
Oh.
And so I said, well, I got a year left. Oh. I was very mature looking for my age.
Okay.
Had a full head of hair and a full beard.
I was going to ask about the head of hair
beard,
thing.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It used to be there.
Used to be there.
It's been a long time. Anyway, so long story short, the opportunity opened where they needed. So I was interning with Tom Dye. Remember Tom Dye?
Tom Dye was awesome.
Oh, Tom Dye. He'd
Love
talk
Tom.
about the weather a little bit, but every now and then he'd pull out, well, Lisa, I got this watermelon that looks like a duck. I was riding my bicycle, and I saw 2 ducks on the pond, and I won't tell you what they were doing. They were making baby ducks. Anyway, he was a great guy, but some of the stuff he would say
Oh, my gosh.
off the air
did
was
not-
so funny. So he retired, and I
They were
was
looking
there,
for a
and-
replacement, too.
right? And I was the cheap version.
Okay.
So I started making
version.
like 19,000 when I started there.
Wow.
Actually, 19,500.
They got you cheap.
Yeah, and so
This has been in the 90s.
I was 96.
Amazing.
But I didn't know
Sure.
what's good.
It
what's
was money,
bad.
right?
It was a
money.
job.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and around here at that point, that was pretty decent.
So
Decent.
I started there, and honestly, I thought I would move on because at the time the industry trend was you work place 2-3 years and you jump and go to someplace big. I grew roots,
Right.
And I did apply for the only spot I really wanted to go was Denver,
Okay.
and I applied a few times, but turns out they're not looking for bald middle-aged white guys.
What?
I'm just saying, and that's not meant to be sexist or racist or anything. I'm just saying
It's just the times.
that is, yeah. So I was like, you know what? That's okay. I love it here, and family's here.
Well, we like
and-
having you here.
Well, now I'm actually offended that you tried to leave.
All the public sentiment turns on you overnight.
Because we've all
What
been
in the
so
world?
we've all been so attached to you, seeing you for so long, and honestly, we've been through so much together. You know what I
that's
mean?
right.
Like
Yeah.
living in this area, it's like so many things happen, right? Because I hear people from all over the country, that I do home loans for, and they say, "Oh no, Missouri's different. They're not here yet. They're just in the process of coming here because of a job or whatnot." And so they're like, "You got any tips or anything?" And I'm like, "Well, we have tornadoes." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons we didn't want to come there." And I'm like, "You live in Florida. How do you like hurricanes?"
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, "Well, at least we can see those coming." I'm like, "Yeah, but most of you don't leave. Don't act like that. You
Yeah.
don't stay there like a bunch of idiots. You know that."
And a tornado's like 50 times a tornado in slow motion.
Right.
You can see it coming, but it's going to last a lot longer.
Right. And so I'm like, tornadoes aren't that bad. We have really good weathercasters, is what I tell people. You guys do get it down pretty good. I mean, it's got to be almost impossible to say that there's going to be this kind of activity and be. I mean, there's always that joke, right? Of it's easy to be a weatherman because you don't have to be right 50% of the time
And still get paid.
keep your job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's to me, knowing that there's this storm coming is one thing, but knowing where a tornado is about to hit, and that's where you guys really shine, is the fact that you know what these weather patterns look like on radar to be able to alert people, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember when the Joplin tornado happened,
Yeah,
and
me too.
you guys were pretty spot on. But it was such an abrupt event anyways that it was really impossible to predict that whole system. So
It was.
that's probably got to be one of the hardest parts of your job. I mean, how do you disassociate yourself from a major event like that?
You really don't.
Right.
As far as the public's concerned.
Yeah.
Because they attach us, weather people, to.
It's your
Well,
fault.
I was going to say, I mean, well, it's not the fault part. But
I'm
what I was
just
going to say
generally
is like,
speaking.
usually in the news, like I know some of the names of like the anchors and all that, but I know all the weathermen.
Yeah.
Because
right about that.
as it's any severe weather happens, it's like, yeah, I know who that person is because I'm watching that, because I don't want to get hurt by a tornado or nature storm, but it's like, yeah.
Right.
So yeah, you get more of the blame, but you also get more of the
Yeah,
notoriety.
you get more of the blame.
Yeah.
You also get more of the people like you and recognize you and know who you are.
Like, oh, well, he said it was going to rain today, but
Yeah.
it didn't, so I guess I could do that job. Well, that's not
So
how it works.
we are pretty far up there on our time, so maybe we should talk about Ozark weather a little bit since we already are.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's get into some specifics
okay.
on like why do we have summer in the middle of winter?
I love those memes though, and those gifs that say, fake summer. Fake spring,
winter, third winter, spring, second winter. It's like second spring, first winter.
Yeah, they're pretty funny.
Well, it's because
they're accurate though. They're accurate.
Yeah, they are.
It's like I look at those things. I'm like, oh yeah, that's true.
You take a jacket.
It does really go.
Right. You take pants to go over your shorts and a jacket to go over your short sleeve shirt.
Yeah. Like we had that snow dump in January. That was like 8 or 10 inches. I mean, it was gone within a week.
Yeah, it got warm.
Because it was all. Well, actually, that was almost gone the next day.
Well, it's the ones that get you are the ice storms.
It is.
Like I was. That March ice storm. 2007, 2008.
Yeah, that thing was
without power for 2 weeks.
That was January 12th.
Was that January? Yep. Yeah, so that lasted forever, but
12th through 14th.
I was in California at that time.
Stop.
My family was here.
You missed a really big.
They sent me a lot of pictures.
It was this is one time where I would use the old cliche that the national folks do, and it was massive.
Massive. It was so widespread though.
Yeah, it was.
So let's answer the actual question then. So why is it? I always assume that it's because we meet where the North Arctic and the Gulf air. And they kind of fight over each other. But I mean, that's just kind of what I think.
And then the jet stream comes through here.
But people don't want to hear that from me.
See?
They want to hear it from you.
You don't need me. Well, see, what it is, we're on the boundary between the North Arctic and the warm Gulf air. And you got the jet stream coming through. And they fight each other.
Dang, man, wow. And they fight each other. Very good. And they fight each other.
But there's actually truth to that.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
The United States is...
I'm going to tell my wife that. I'm like, yeah, I was right.
Brandon said I was right. You got to start listening to me more.
Do you
That's not going to work.
Sign something that verifies...
I need to do this on air.
You were
Be like, hey, David from Exploring the Ozarks, just so you know...
Honey, we've got this recorded. He said I was right.
Well, there is... I think every state probably has the same saying, where if you don't like the weather, wait, fill in the blank.
I hear that.
And it'll change. Well, that's not unique. It just happens to be the United States geographically is unique.
Right.
And that's why we have more severe weather than any place on Earth.
Yeah.
More tornadoes, not necessarily lightning, but it's just we've got the Rockies, we've got the huge,
Valley.
all the way through Canada, so that's dry, cold air. Then you've got the Gulf of Mexico, and it all is uniquely situated so that with the change of seasons, as the Earth tilts, then we have the change in the jet stream, and as that brings warmer or colder air, as a rule, then you start to get clashes. And so we have...
Is that why the winters are so weird, but the summers are just pretty consistent?
Yeah.
Is it because the way the jet stream moves around?
Well, and
trough.
Once we are into particularly July, August, because there's a little offset.
Right.
You have the solstice in June,
right?
But July, August are usually our hottest. But that's because of the bubble of warmth over the U.S., the jet stream's way up north, and we don't get a whole lot of weather typically.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas in the spring, and then usually again in the fall, and there's so many different factors in it.
Topography
El Nino,
too,
La Nina, right?
Because I noticed I live. Okay, so we are right now on the Springfield Plateau.
Yes,
I live in Highlandville, just south of Ozarks. So right, if you know where Busick is by chance,
yep.
Pensmore Castle, that's on my road. So I live as you go around, you go past the EE exit, you go around this big curve right, big curve left, and you start dropping down those big, huge hills.
Yeah.
Right? And it's actually called the Highlandville Fault Line is right there in my yard. There's actually an old fault line that they call the Highlandville Fault Line.
Interesting.
And I noticed because I'm down in this valley, our weather is completely different than it is up on the hill because all the condensation starts to set in at nighttime, so it stays cooler down there most of the time. Sometimes I'm 8 degrees colder pretty consistently or hotter depending on what type of weather pattern is up on top of the hill.
Interesting.
Tornadoes and things like that, weather patterns seem to break up when they get to those hills, right?
Yeah.
So the Springfield Plateau seems to get a lot of that stuff that you guys see. And I watch radar all the time, and when the weather patterns are coming in, and we'll notice that it kind of breaks up as soon as it starts to hit those hills.
Yeah.
But then when Branson got hit by the big tornado that went through there a few years ago, it was almost like an anomaly because there wasn't really that many tornadoes that have hit the Branson area because of the hills, because everything kind of starts to break up as it goes. So that, I think, also plays a big factor because it comes right off Kansas, the big plains of Kansas, comes off the Rockies through the plains, and it feels like it picks up steam a little bit. Am I right?
It can. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Oh, sorry if you're going to answer that first.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it sounds like the jet stream is one of the deciding factors here. It's like whatever that brings in to the mix is what ends up dictating a lot of like these hot and cold patterns.
And the jet stream can change depending on.
Yeah, like when those atmospheric rivers came in through California. I mean, would the jet stream
actually most
of
our
some of that?
Most of our systems this winter and even now will have. And initially Northern California got in on it too. These storms would drop down along the coast, they'd slam California, then they'd kick east through Arizona, New Mexico, and here they come for us.
Right, and they kind of shoot up and right into
And depending
us.
if we have a cold front or from the north or the Gulf of Mexico, it depends on what it would do.
Yeah,
when it mixes and all that.
The storm strength of the jet stream level. So everything that happens down here is dictated by something going on upstairs.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
even our sunsets, actually.
Oh,
I love that fact. Actually, that's one of my favorite facts.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, like the dust that comes from the deserts of Arizona and things like that.
Yep.
Which is why a lot of times you see that our sunsets are super bright red and orange and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was in Hawaii and I'm sitting there thinking, our sunsets in Missouri are way better than Hawaii. And people are like, nah, you're full of it. I'm like, no, you really, it's amazing.
I was thinking about that when I was at SpaceX in the desert over there. I mean, I didn't realize that, but those sunsets were spectacular.
Well,
because
those
of that
dirty rains we get too, where it's just, it gets done raining or it sprinkles for a little bit and it's just dirt that's left on your car.
Yeah.
That's dust from the desert out west, right?
I did not know that.
Because that jet stream goes right on through there and it comes
So
right
Arizona
up through
followed
there.
me back.
It does.
They
So it's
can.
always there, David.
Actually, it's Arizona going, I spit on you in Missouri.
I fart in your general direction. I bite my thumb at you.
So then, I pick it up on something you said in that earlier when you said that the United States has a lot of extreme weather. So, like in Europe and South America,
I've
and those
wondered
places,
that.
is that so? Those are more stable then.
They still have,
they
still
don't
have
get
tornadoes lately
If they
in
get
Europe, though, I
tornadoes,
think.
it's like a rare event over
It's
there.
far more rare. I don't know what the numbers are for Europe.
You're probably right.
But they're further north. They're surrounded by water. They're smaller.
So if I went further south, like Italy or Spain or something like
They
that,
do have them. They're just not as frequent. And Australia has them.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think they call them Willy Willies down there. Can you imagine?
I love that.
If I heard you say that
I know.
on the news, well, we got a Willy Willy coming in. Can you do it for us one time? Just
right now.
To let, I'm sure nobody would know what you're talking about.
Breaking into programming. This meteorologist, Brandon Beck, in the KY3 Weather Center, we have a confirmed Willy Willy. And it's a strong one.
You bet. A big, strong Willy Willy coming in.
Yeah. I don't know how anybody takes that seriously.
Oh, my gosh, no.
You listen to the Australian language, and
We're going to save
there's
that.
so many other
though.
things that they say
That's-
as well.
That's saving that. But, I'm not sure what I was
That'll
gonna
go on the
ask you next,
soundboard
but I
now.
think we're probably needing to wrap up. But this
we
has
are,
been,
we're closing in on
son of a
50
bitch.
minutes.
Well,
so,
this has been probably the funnest interview I think I've had.
I agree.
And I really, really appreciate you coming
Sure.
on, Brandon. And,
Yeah.
and if you don't mind being a friend of the show and maybe coming back every once in a while
Sure,
or
be
something
happy
like
to.
that,
Talk
that'd
weather.
be super
Yeah.
awesome, man. Because,
or talk Bald Ben at Universal Studios.
well, can you do something about my allergies or anything? Like, what do I do, man? I mean, I'm struggling right now.
I struggle from that too.
Gosh,
It
man.
is.
A good nasal
I-
spray
well,
makes a big difference.
I know a lot of people that move here from all over the country that I
Yeah.
do loans for, and they don't have allergies until they show up in Springfield.
I keep
Yeah.
telling my wife I had no allergies in Arizona. I was like, "Can we move back to a desert, please?"
See,
'Cause
I begged my
she,
wife.
she doesn't have allergies, so
Right.
she doesn't understand. This.
So I went to
It's like
Florida.
a constant cold.
I
It's
was
like-
sick in Florida, and I could literally see the pollen like washing on the shore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, shoot. I didn't bring my allergy meds because usually I leave Missouri and I'm good.
Yeah.
But I go to Florida and then I get back home and I
Yeah.
see this national map of pollen and it was like super red in Florida. And it made sense because I saw the pollen and I was like, I'm done, man. I'm screwed.
Yeah.
But I'm literally laying in bed for like the fourth day and I was like, honey, if you don't mind, I'm going to probably book a flight to Arizona and just let you drive home. I need
Matt,
dry
next year, you guys
weather.
can come down with me to SpaceX.
Oh, dude, I'd
Because
love
actually,
to.
they have South Padre Island, which is a big.
Oh, it's a,
Yes.
that's where.
beach.
Oh, I
It's a
got a
big
whole story
resort,
about that.
so-
Man, I got stung by jellyfish there and pooped on by a seagull.
I
all in one
actually
trip.
saw
Wow.
several jellyfish washed up on the beach when I was down
Yeah,
there.
no, I got stung by jellyfish. They said to put me in meat tenderizer, and my whole family's like, "Cool, you do that while we're gonna go sightseeing." And I was like, "All right, fine." So I found a whole loaf of bread, and I thought I was the seagull whisperer.
Right.
Because as soon as you take like a crumb
Oh,
outside,
of course.
they
Oh,
sit
yeah.
I
on
saw
you.
a couple people doing that.
Oh, there was a couple hundred of them, and I was like, "This is awesome!" And people are watching and stuff, and I was throwing it up there, and they're catching it, and I go back to grab another piece of bread, and I feel this warmth.
Oh gosh.
You know, and I have meat tenderizer all over me too while we're at it. And all of a sudden, I feel this warmth, and then it just like goes into my ear and stuff, and I was like, I just got pooped on by a seagull,
Yeah.
and there's nothing I can do about it. I can't bring it down and beat it up or anything.
It's where you say, no more bread for you.
No more bread for you. So I just start, luckily my family wasn't around, so I start crying and walking inside with my bread.
There you go.
It looked very pitiful because I had meat tenderizer falling off of me.
If I had been stung and then pooped on, I would have been the same.
Dude,
way.
it was
I totally get that.
I was very traumatized.
But were you stung all over the place or what?
Yes. So which the doctor that we called, he said that I had stepped into a nest. And when my brother was walking in front of me, but he was a little off to the side, and he walked out. And, usually when you're out there, you can walk out for 500 feet and you're still up to like your knees, right?
Yeah.
Like he was up to maybe his waist or so. And it was such churning water that it was super dark water, and I couldn't see down, right? And I'm walking, and all of a sudden, I dropped down into a hole, and I got up to here. And as soon as it hit my chin, I was stung from my chin to my toes. Oh, gosh. And I'd never felt that kind of pain before. Like, it was super painful. And so the doctor that we called at the local hospital, that was his my brother really got a kick out of it because it was either pee on me or put me in meat tenderizer. And so
I'd heard the pee on me thing. I was going to ask you about that.
I heard that was incorrect, though.
Well, I don't know. I didn't let him pee on me, so I don't know. Yeah. I think I may have tried to pee on my own feet
pee
or
on
something.
jellyfish thing, guys. Don't do it.
I don't know if he was.
Now we need to bring a doctor on just so we can talk about this.
I think this guy does this to tourists.
Probably.
What it is. But he said no. Literally, just get meat tenderizer and let him sit in it for about 8 hours, and it takes the sting away. It pulls the sting out like a sunburn almost.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did until my ego was reflected in the poop. That I felt so bad about everything, and my life was over at that point. So all the pretty girls that are on the beach and stuff watched it happen, and it was like a bunch of 18-year-old girls and stuff. So I thought I was cool feeding all these birds, and then I get pooped on. So so I have a disdain for the beach most of the time. We saw sharks this time in Florida. I'd never seen that before. Sharks like 4 or 5 foot, 6 foot reef bull sharks and stuff like that. We're feeding, and I'd never seen so many people exit the ocean in my life. These
run away.
2 local guys are out there with goggles, and they're like,
close the
sharks,
beach.
and it looked like Jaws, the movie, where everybody just
I was just thinking
starts going out.
Well, we're at that point. We should probably stop.
Yes,
okay.
Sorry to make that about me, but Brandon,
that's good.
You are awesome at what you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for keeping us safe. Number one, with everything. Thanks for keeping us entertained while we're at it.
Yes,
you bet. And nothing but
we have to go find those belly button
the best
clips,
for you.
The blue screen thing.
There you go.
We got to do something. Find a blooper reel or something that we can include in this.
If you can find that and send it to me, I will put that in here.
Yeah, he's going to be like looping it together. And
I will definitely.
I know there are a couple bloopers on YouTube. Maybe what I hate to bring this up, but it's out there. I did make the Jimmy Fallon show one time.
Really?
For a blooper.
And that's a great way to end.
I think I remember that.
That's great.
There you go.
Awesome. See, you're international now. But so just keep messing up and you'll keep getting more highlights, Brandon.
They're all right.
But Brandon, again, thank you so much. We're very humbled that you came on the show, and come back anytime, and we'll laugh some more about things that we do wrong and bad things that happen to us. But
I'll do it.
Otherwise, usually how we end the show is just tell everybody to keep exploring the Ozarks.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, Brandon. Thanks again for listening to Exploring the Ozarks. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media channels to help us keep exploring the stories of the Ozarks. If you're looking for more ways to support our show, we have sponsorships for businesses and Patreon for individual supporters. Check the links in the description for more details. Thanks for your support, and keep exploring the Ozarks.